Welcome to Fourth and Frames. I'm your host, Chris Battistel. And with me, as always, is the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty of the fantasy football space. And I'll let you decide which is which. That's Rhett Manuel and Drew Scott. And tonight on Fourth and Frames, we are hosting a Scott Fishbowl 14 mock draft with very special guest, Jack Lucenay. Let's get it popping.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Like I mentioned at the top of the show, you know something's good when the creative mind behind it calls it the worst fantasy show. We got contributor and writer at the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Usually he's talking ball. Other times he's talking wrestling. Tonight's guest is Jack Lucenay. Jack, welcome to the show, man.
Man, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show. If Rhett and Drew are the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, I guess that makes me Brutus the Barber Beefcake tonight.
Let's go. Let's go. And we'll have to decide which one is which by the end of the show, Jack. We'll let you decide who's getting their head smashed through the glass.
That's a lot of pressure.
All right, we got a Scott Fishbowl 14 mock draft. I know our drafters are eagerly waiting to hop in and get this rolling. What's up, Mr. Scampers? Welcome back to the show. Shimi, I think I'm pronouncing that properly. Thanks for tuning in. Drew, Rhett, you guys are excited. I believe Rhett's the only guy doing the live draft this year, right?
Yeah, I'll be in the H next Saturday, July 6th at it's gonna be the brewery over there. A lot of cool people. We're starting at noon, so I got to get going pretty early in the morning, especially if I want to get back that night. So, got to take it light a little bit, got to scale back, but you know what? Gonna have fun regardless. Meet some people, take a few pictures, get that nice Scott Fishbowl bag that they're gonna hit us with. Already ordered
the
a shirt,
swag
so you
bag.
know what? Yeah, the swag bag, baby. So we're going to have a good time with
We
that.
all get
it. You mean the people in Houston are going to get Rhett the Tank on that weekend? Just running down the street naked? No,
we're not getting the hotel rent. No, we're good.
I'm actually doing a live draft as well. I did one in St. Louis last year and it was a blast. So I'm doing it again this year, but they didn't have one in St. Louis, unfortunately, but I'm going down to Nashville, Tennessee. I think it's July 13th. I think it's a week after Rhett's draft. I'm going to be drafted from the 3 spot in Nashville. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Terrific. And Jack, my arch nemesis, I know we are in the same division together, the Joker division, drafting side by side here. Are you going to do anything here to try to throw me off? What's your game plan?
No, I'm going to show you exactly what my strategy is, and then I'm going to beat you with it. That's exactly how I like to play. I'm uber competitive. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to beat you with it.
All right. I like it, man. I dig it. I'm looking forward to starting the draft. I know the drafters are as well. Smokescreen City. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get this thing fired up. We'll start the draft. Pull up the draft board. Right here. First pick, Jorge, goes Josh Allen. Jalen Hurts, 2 running quarterbacks off the top of the list. Drew, you're on the clock. Talk us through your pick, man.
Yeah, so for me, it was I wanted to get one of the 3 mobile quarterbacks that crushed in the scoring last year. I'm still confident in them this year. They're my quarterback 1, 2, and 3, and it's Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and then Lamar Jackson. So the reason that I wanted to be in this spot was knowing that I could guarantee myself one of those top 3 quarterbacks. And so I'm basically just taking whichever one of the 3 falls to me.
Nice. Lamar Jackson. Oh, first tight end off the board. Stacy Perez going Sammy Laps. Not a bad pick. I mean, considering the scoring, Jack. Would you have made the tight end pick that early?
No, I'm a proponent of taking a lot of tight ends this year, But at 104, that feels like a bit of a reach. I just with McCaffrey on the board, with Mahomes on the board, with CeeDee Lamb on the board, that's hard for me. Especially because I think people are underrating the running back scoring. People are forgetting that it's 2.5 a carry. The running backs are also getting points per first down on their carries as much as if they are receiving. I mean, he falls to me. I'm just going to go ahead and take CMC here.
Mac.
Yeah, I would have taken Mahomes, just to be clear. If Mahomes had fallen to me there, I would have gone with Mahomes. But being that he's off the board, I'm not a believer in Anthony Richardson like others. So that's why.
Is there something behind that? Is there something behind the non-belief in Anthony Richardson, the small sample size?
He said he's not going to change his play style, which means he's going to run into Foyce Aluakon a bunch of times again. Like, that's not going to work, bro. I don't care how big and fast and tough you think you are at the NFL level. You're not running face first into NFL linebackers and coming out scot-free on the other side of it.
So you're just predicting that he's going to deal with injuries?
Injuries, yes, but like he would have to. Yeah, I mean, it's injuries because you're relying on him to have the rushing season. It's not his passing acumen that's going to get him by in this format. So you're basically saying he has to have like a crazy rushing season. And if he's not going to learn to slide and get out of bounds and he's just going to keep taking hits, like absolutely he's going to get injured. It's inevitable at that point.
Yeah, I try not to play the game of predicting injuries, but I think something like sliding or getting out of bounds is something that's pretty easily coachable. And there's nothing I've seen about Anthony Richardson.
He's going to not do that. Like, you can say it's coachable, but he's told you, I'm not going to do that, coach.
I'm not his coach, so I don't know if he didn't tell me that. I don't know what he's telling his coaches, but
he's out here telling coaches, reporters, and stuff like, I'm not changing my game.
No, that way I wouldn't want him to change his game. I mean, doing a better job of getting out of bounds you don't have to change your play style to do that. You can still be just as aggressive up until that very point. It just changes the last second of a play. So I've got a lot of faith in Anthony Richardson though, so I have to kind of play the other side of that argument. I'm a big believer. Both of these guys know I'm a big believer in him this year.
Yeah. For me, it was just the fact that because of the nerfed scoring between the pocket passer and the rushing quarterbacks, I kind of want to get that cheat code at the position because there is a bit of a drop off after the elite rushers. It's one passing point for every 50 passing yards. Someone dropped a tweet there. I think it was Jordan Vanek. He dropped a tweet where he said 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns for Joe Burrow is worth 18 points. And something like Rashid Shaheed in the return game getting 90 return yards in a game is almost equal to the same amount of points. So there's something to kind of fading the pocket passing quarterbacks in the format. But, I mean, if you're going to secure one, Patrick Mahomes is probably the one you want just because he has the possibility of putting up 45 and 45 in a season, right?
Yeah, that's the bet you're making with that type of quarterback. And if there's anybody you want to make that bet on, it's Mahomes year in and year out. So, yeah, he's the one guy I would be looking to take in that category.
Yeah, especially with the weapons that they've just injected into that system. Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce signed on for 2 years. Rashid Rice still there. They brought Mecole Hardman back. So Isaiah Pacheco was still, a dominant runner in the back, out of the backfield. So Kansas City Chiefs, man, they're going to be a team that I think you're going to be able to draft at a good value, especially a player like Hollywood Brown this season. Recapping the first round: Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Sam Laporta, Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, Anthony Richardson, CeeDee Lamb, Breece Hall, CJ Stroud, Bijan Robinson, not Brian, Tyreek Hill with first 12, circling back, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, the first 2 picks in the second round. I mean, that Tyreek Hill, I think the computer made the picks, but the Tyreek Hill Jefferson stack is pretty sexy, Jack. Any pick outside of Sam Laporta at 1-4 that you are not making, Jack?
Yeah, it's actually those two wide receivers at the 112. And I know the computer probably made those picks, but that's going to be popular in a lot of drafts, I think. With the wide receivers getting pushed down a little bit, I think some people are going to be trying to get that double wide receiver stack. I'm not feeling it with the way that the scoring is set up, but more importantly, the way the roster construct is set up. You're basically taking a wide receiver and a flex, but that flex now potentially is less valuable than a running back or tight end you could have got at that same spot. So I don't mind Tyreek because of the immense upside. Jefferson feels like an auto pick, and it's the rookie quarterback. And even if he gets a nice little 1,200, 1,300 yard season and 7 touchdowns, it's not going to equate in this kind of tournament, I don't think. So I would have gone probably with, I like Saquon a whole lot. I probably would have gone Tyreek and Saquon there.
Yeah. What about you, Rhett? You feel the same way?
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting here, and at CJ Stroud at the 110, we kind of talked about it pre-show where it's, some quarterbacks, these pocket quarterbacks, you feel really good about Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Any other pocket quarterback in the first round, I'm kind of taking a step back and I'm sort of waiting, which is why I take Breece Hall at the 1-9, because running back is more of a premium position, and we know Breece Hall is going to get a ton of carries. And I hope for Kyler Murray to come back to me in the second round, which he did. And if he didn't, I would have went tight end in that scenario. But
yep. So CJ Stroud is the pick for you that you think you're not touching.
I think I would have avoided that late in the first round. Yeah.
Drew, how about you, man? What's the pick?
I'll tell you, Rhett, I think you got the best value so far getting Kyler at the 2-4. And maybe the guy at the 1-2 turn would have taken him if he was here, but with the way the scoring is set up with them adding Marvin Harrison Jr., I would be taking him ahead of Stroud personally. So the fact that you got him after Stroud and you got him, 4 picks into the second round, I think that's the best value up to this point. I think he's been a great value in drafts. It makes me kind of wish that I had a pick a little bit later in the first round just because of where he's going. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of part of the reason why I'm excited about the 1-9 is because you get a quick turnaround those first 2 picks, and then you get an early third round reversal right there. So you're able to do some pretty good things early on in the draft.
Yep. Speaking of the 1-9 and the draft spot selection, Jack, was there any thought process of you picking the 1-6, or were you just pick and go?
No, I mean, I did it last year, and last year it was very much for the same reason of I wanted to avoid really that third round reversal. Being at 106, I'm always in the middle, so I'm always waiting the same amount for my picks no matter what. The only thing is, I feel like I had a little bit of buyer's remorse. And again, it's like I'm not the type of person to go in, set my pick and division and everything, and then be like, oh, actually, I wanted something else, and then switch out. I just committed to what I did. But if I could do it again right now, I would take the 112, I think. I like having that double pick and then the third round reversal and just having those double picks later on in a super flex. There's a couple quarterback rooms late where I'm like not sure who I want, and so I'll just take both guys, given that it's like 22 rounds deep. But the 106 I feel like is a little bit playing on easy mode because you get to avoid a lot of runs, you avoid the reversals, you can see what's coming down the pipe in terms of like, again, right now I can see a bunch of wide receivers coming off the board, so it's like I know. Well, if I want a wide receiver, maybe I wait or whatever. It's like making those decisions are easier for me because I can tier-based draft a little easier from this spot. So for me, that's why I did it ultimately, is because I do want to win.
Yeah, there you go, man. Play to win the game.
The 112 is looking nice, though. Like, if you just take the players that, like, if you take the players that he took out of it and just take, like, if you take into consideration what you would have done if you were at the 112, like, I would have wanted to take Kyler and one of probably Tyreek or Gibbs And then on the way back around, you could have gotten your choice of a couple of top tight ends, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, like he got there. Like you could realistically right now have Kyler, Gibbs, and Amon-Ra picking out the 12th spot. Like that would be one hell of a start. And so like you're just taking the players out of it, just looking at who was on the board at the time. That looks like a fun spot to pick from right now with how ADP is shaking out.
Yeah, it's a lot closer to what I would have done as well.
You son of a
your draft room.
Oh, you suck.
I thought about taking him 2 picks earlier just to spite you. I'm not even gonna lie.
It would have been a better pick than the pick you made, so that's a shame.
Quite honestly, I wanted the Kincaid pick there because we were talking when we had Howard Bender on a couple weeks ago. He was really selling Kincaid in that offense being primarily the first option, and that's kind of what you want when you're targeting elite tight ends. So Kincaid in this format, if he sees the targets that people are projecting him to see, could be seeing some nice production. Recap the second round. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Travis Kelce, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Dak Prescott, Jonathan Taylor, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews. Then at the 3-1, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Dalton Kincaid, Garrett Wilson, Kyle Pitts, Justin Herbert, which I was hoping would make his way back around to me, but he did not. Thank you, Jack. Travis Etienne, Brock Bowers, Drake London, Devon Achane, Evan Ingram at the 3-12, Jorge at the 1 spot going Josh Allen, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram. What are your thoughts on that there, Rhett?
I'm sitting here and I know the tight end premium is a big thing going on right here. I think that's where he's going. Mark Andrews and Evan Ingram, both guys who are probably going to get a high number of targets in each of their offenses. But the start that stuck out to me, because Jorge got the mobility with Josh Allen at the 1-1, Stacy did the same thing, but with a pocket quarterback with Dak Prescott in the second round. So I kind of wanted to bounce that off of you guys and ask y'all what y'all thought of that start, Jack.
I think the Bowers pick is the one that's a bit of a reach. And I get it if you're really enamored with them, but just historically speaking, rookie tight ends. And I love Bowers, but I love Bowers when I can get him at a value. And ahead of Ingram, ahead of Jake Ferguson. Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm saying, like, I would have taken Ingram and Ferguson ahead of Bowers. Like, I have Bowers in the same tier as I have Pat Freiermuth, for example.
Rhett, there's a question from Les here. Our boy Les, Mr. Milli Vanilli. The M stands for Milli Vanilli.
I'm going to punt tight end.
Rhett, what do you think about 2 QB this early? I was looking at Kyler after Stroud.
Well, here's the thing. I think in a super flex format, you always need to consider getting a couple quarterbacks early on. So I think there are premium positions that are going to be especially interesting because of how many of them you can start. I think tight ends, because of the unbelievable scoring bonuses, you have to consider a lot of them early. And getting 2 quarterbacks as early as you can also a sound strategy. So I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, there you go. Especially securing Kyler Murray, because realistically, there's through 6 to 7 rushing quarterbacks. Maybe guys that'll see 50, 55 carries, 60 carries, like true carries.
So that's actually why I reached
probably a good number.
Herbert, because I think this year Justin Herbert's going to be a rushing quarterback a lot more than people think. When you talk about that system with Harbaugh and Greg Roman and just the way that Herbert is built, like he's gonna still be a passing quarterback, but I have him pegged for 8 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all, man. I've been hammering that drum of not fading Justin Herbert because of that, because of the historical data that coaching system has given us from their time at Stanford to San Francisco and so on. I mean, every quarterback that they've had in their system has been producing with his feet. And Justin Herbert's no slouch with that at all. So the fact that he has the big arm, my only worry is the weapons around him. how many big plays is he going to be able to produce in that offense, throwing the ball, especially in this format where the passing yardage is nerfed. So he has to hit that 4,000 yard passing mark. And can he do that without the explosive plays? That's my only worry with Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more bullish on the wide receiver room, I think, than most people, though, because I think Rhett Manuel is a guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got it. Yeah, he's all right. He's you get physical with Ladd. You get physical with Ladd, and he tends to disappear a little bit. So I think once defenses kind of pick up on that kind of stuff, they're going to eliminate him from the game. And then who are you throwing to at that point? Quentin Johnston can't catch.
QJ, baby.
I do think Hughes is going to have a better season than
I mean, you hope so, because it was horrible last year.
Yeah.
You hope he has better season.
I definitely think he's going to rebound a little bit. But
yeah.
It's
I
more
think you'll see an upgrade in touchdowns.
Certain quarterbacks, like, Brady used to do this all the time, too, where it was like you never wanted his receivers, really, except for, like, the Randy Moss here and, like, a little bit of Wes Welker. But, like, he was the guy that, like, was a lot of, like, Jordan Love is a good example this year, too, of, like, everyone's trying to pick which wide receiver is going to hit for Green Bay when it's like, really, it's just Jordan Love is going to hit. It's like the quarterback is the sum of all parts. So I'm not that worried about it. But I also think I'm way more enamored with Ladd McConkey, I think, than most people.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rhett, you're a big Ladd guy, right? You're a
I was big fan of the guy coming out of the draft and everything. I had quite a bit of stock of him coming out of rookie drafts. I am going to say that in a format like this and in redrafts, I'm not going to reach for him because I just think, as I've talked about in previous weeks, it's really hard to get elite production out of a year one wide receiver. So I'm probably going to I'll take anybody at value, but I'm not going to reach for him at all.
Yeah, there's been some interesting builds. 2 teams, 3 teams, 4, 5, 6 teams with one quarterback. Drew, you're one of those teams. Is it just the nerfing of the passing yards that's making you kind of push them down the list?
It's partially the nerfing and passing yards, and then partially just having faith that the quarterback one I took at 103 should be able to have a different level of ceiling that a lot of teams that already have 2 quarterbacks, their first quarterback can't really offer. So it gives me a little bit more confidence to wait on the second quarterback. Now, like if for some reason a guy like Kyler was available in the second round, even already having Lamar, I would take a second quarterback. But once those guys that offer that extra level of ceiling are gone, and you have, mostly just a collection of guys that are all pocket passers that this scoring is really kind of nerfing. It just feels like I can create more upside on my team at other spots as opposed to taking just what I think there's going to be a large bucket in terms of quarterback 2s in this scoring that you can wait on your second quarterback if you feel confident in the first guy that you've got.
You don't want to wait too long, because then you're going to end up getting a quarterback that's throwing for 3,100 yards and 25 touchdowns. And then at that point, you may as well not even start a quarterback in the Superflex spot, right?
Carr. You're going to end up with Derek Carr.
No, I agree. And there's a tier of quarterback I have in mind where I'm looking at, and we're almost there. We're almost at points where if I don't have my quarterback 2 at a certain point, I'm feeling a little nervous.
Yeah, but I mean, the scoring permits that strategy where you don't have to put a second quarterback in that super flex spot with the kick returners, with the high output of tight ends, with the bolstered scoring for the running backs and the points per touch and the points per reception, the first down bonuses. So you can kind of get afforded that little bit of a leeway to either push the quarterback down completely after you get your first one at the top of the draft and not put one in there at all, or just have one and put one on your bench. At the 1-3, was that something that you considered, or was the 1-3 decision for you, Drew, strictly to secure one of those top 3 quarterbacks on your list?
Yeah, it's pretty much I'm locked in at quarterback in the top 3 picks.
Yeah. So you picked your draft slot based on your first pick, then, yeah. And then
Well, yeah, it favored into it a lot for sure. Honestly, it was partially factoring in the quarterbacks, and it was partially factoring in that I was doing a live draft, and so there was only, by the time I got into Scott Fishbowl, there were certain spots that were already taken.
correct.
Like I was hoping, to be honest with you, to get into that 106, 107 area so that I could grab Anthony Richardson in the first round, because I knew that you would need to be probably around there. And, you know, being able to start the draft with Richardson and have an earlier pick come back around in the second round, and then having the third round reversal not affect you as much, I would have preferred that. But by the time I got in, it was either I'm good with that auto pick. My bad. I didn't realize I was on the clock. But I had a queue set up, so it's all good. But yeah, by the time I got in Scott Fishbowl, it was basically either I'd pick a spot at the front of the draft or the back end of the draft. And so I was last year, I was on the 112, and so this year I wanted to do something different and kind of see what it was like at the top of the draft. So I went with the front end.
I dig it, man. Rhett, favorite team outside of yours so far?
Favorite team outside of mine so far. First off, I think my team is fantastic. So thank you for the love on that. But if we're looking at teams that are that I'm a big fan of, I'm just gonna go ahead and looking at everything. Drew, what's your team look like right now? Probably, you know what? I'm kind of on Team Drew right now because I like the start that he had with Lamar, Taylor, Drake London, and Marvin Harrison. I mean, there's a lot of upside in those first 4 picks. So I think in a tournament like this where you are going to need those upside weeks, I think Drew is off to an excellent start in terms of having those sort of boom guys that can help you in a tournament format like this.
Thank you, brother.
I like that. Jack, you got one that you like outside of yours?
Yeah. I like Stacy with the overload of tight end, Stacy P. Gonna have to start hitting some running backs pretty soon, though, or that's gonna be a scary situation. And then like the reverse is Spectacular Less is doing the complete reverse where they stocked up on some running backs that I like, including Gibbs and Pacheco, but they don't have a tight end, so that's very scary too. If I could mix Stacy's team and Spectacular Less, they would have a perfect roster.
Now, does the bolstered or juiced tight end scoring make it a little easier to maybe wait on some of the later guys, because now those guys are a little bit more relevant than they usually are in a standard kind of just half point PPR?
I mean, to a degree. The problem is, like, I don't see a ton of breakout potential in those late tight ends. And we kind of talked about it a little bit pre-show, but like last year, I had Trey McBride on my team. I liked Sam Laporta as a rookie. There were other tight ends like Tucker Kraft, like both the Green Bay boys, but mostly I was in on Tucker Kraft because he compared favorably actually to Mark Andrews coming out of their draft comps. So there were a lot of tight ends going late that I liked, that I stashed. And this year it's like the late tight end stash is like Taysom Hill, who he's still going to be relevant because they just have nothing else. But it's, you know what I mean? Like, that's really gross. As far as like the young tight ends, like late, it's like Cole Kmet is probably 4th on that depth chart, you would think. Cade Otton is maybe relevant, you would hope. Like, I don't know. I'm not super enamored with a lot of these later tight ends. But hey, it's a mock draft, and I've already got Tua. So, you know, I got to hawk Tua, right?
You had to get that in there. Huh?
Got to get the hawk Tua stack.
You had to spit on that thing. We are 7 rounds deep. We have Jack Lucenay on the show. Scott Fishbowl 14 mock. We appreciate everyone tuning in. If you head over to the YouTube page, like the stream, subscribe to the Fantasy in Frames channel. We are going 15 rounds, I believe, in this draft here. There's a few good builds. There's some interesting strategies. That's what you got to do when you are in such a big tournament. You kind of got to get outside the box. I talked with the winner last year, and pretty much they just got lucky by picking the right waivers. I believe he drafted late Sam Laporta, Kyron Williams, and Puka Nacua. So there is a little bit of draft luck that you need to kind of hit on. So being able to draft those kind of guys late was an absolute hit for him. In championship week, he was starting Easton Stick. So don't put too much stock into what your team looks like coming out of the draft. And he smoked. Like that last week, I believe he was up 40 points before the Sunday nighter and Monday nighter. Like he just blew everybody out of the water. And it was his first tournament that he was in, and he ended up winning. Scott Fish hasn't even won his own tournament yet. And first time in the tournament, guy comes out and just puts a notch on his bedpost. 7 rounds in, Tank Dell, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, some great value picks here in the top end of the 8th, back end of the 7th. We touched on a little bit pre-show on kick returners. I have been known to kind of reach on Rashid Shaheed a little bit early. I've been adjusting that a bit and dropping the kick returners, primarily the guys that are projected to be just kick returners. I've been dropping them down a bit because of how the new league rules are going into the new year on the kick returns. Could it be a possibility that we see guys like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, Xavier Worthy, these electric guys take more of a role into that part of the team? And is that ultimately going to make those guys cheat codes? And should we be reaching on those guys, projecting that to happen?
I wouldn't reach on anyone who is only kick returning or punt returning. Like they really have to be doing both, in my opinion. Like I like Rashid Shaheed because, I mean, you look at who besides Chris Olave, and I'm a big Bub Mean stan, but like there's not a lot of guys like, when you're throwing out like A.T. Perry and stuff, it's like Rashid Shaheed's going to profile as like the second or third wide receiver there. He has the path to a relevant wide receiver season, and then the kick return stuff is just like on top of it. But to be an exclusive return, like you'd have to be doing the kick return and the punt return and getting all those points, and you'd have to also be on a team that has a bad defense that has a bad defense,
offense.
Or bad offense, because they're getting a bunch of punts and kick returns on them. So it's like, well, bad defense too, because like you got to let a touchdown happen, right?
Yeah.
If you're just like a good defense and you're holding the other team to one touch, like there's no kick returns then to be returned. So there's a lot of things that have to go right for you to be like a relevant return guy only.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to come down to like I think a lot of the guys that end up contributing in terms of kick returns and punt returns. So I think a lot of that's going to happen. At least a lot of those guys are going to find our rosters come week 1 waivers, like whenever week 1's done and we see who actually has those roles, because we're drafting so early before preseason even starts, and a lot of those battles in terms of kick returning, punt returning, a lot of that goes all the way down to the preseason to decide who's going to get those roles. And so like we won't really know for sure for the majority of these teams who's going to be playing those roles whenever we do our drafts. And so I think a lot of it we're going to see week 1 play out. We're going to see who hits because of the scoring format, and a lot of those guys are going to end up being waiver pickups. So if a guy like Shaheed doesn't have a prominent role in the offense along with the potential to having those duties, I'm just not drafting him at all. And I'll let week 1 show me what I should care about, and then I'll fight whatever I got to fight on waivers from that. But I just, I don't want to burn a pick and a guy end up getting cut or not even end up being in that role because I'm trying to play a guessing game so early in the offseason.
Yep. And with the new rules, it's going to be so unpredictable on who's going to get that role. Because if you look at what the XFL did, and it's totally different talent class. The top returner in 10 games in this style of returning system that the NFL is going to use, 900 return yards. So if teams are able to gain an advantage in the return game, I can absolutely see a situation where Miami's down 7 or down 14, and Tyreek Hill's the guy returning kicks at that point, right? And then if Tyreek Hill's the guy returning kicks and he's the wide receiver one on the team, I mean, Tyreek Hill's value is exponentially ahead of every other wide receiver at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
So there could be a situation.
NFL, though, is everything is so specialized, and it's like your kick returners might not be your punt returners, and like there's just so much that goes into it. So it's like, and now you're dissecting it, and then like you just said, you're not going to play Tyreek as the returner for 4 quarters, but in the fourth quarter with a game on the line, now he's your return. But what that means is actually the guy that you drafted as the returner that you thought had value, all of a sudden when the game's on the line, he's not even doing the thing that you drafted him for.
Yeah. So like you don't want to reach too much on guys that are primarily hold the return value, because I've seen that happen. I've been guilty of that early in a few mocks, and I've been dropping guys like Rashid Shaheed. There's a couple others I don't really want to name drop because we're in a live draft, but it's a mock, so you don't care that much. 9 rounds in, recap the 8th round. T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is a great value there. Drew, by the way, was that the quarterback that you were talking about?
Yeah. Just the rushing upside mixed with the fact, like we've already seen him in terms of points per game. He's been a top 10 quarterback in the past, and now you give him a legitimate weapon in Malik Neighbors, and then what the scoring format offers for rushing quarterbacks. He was the last of those guys that I really wanted. It was him and Deshaun Watson, and Watson went in the 6th round. So being able to wait until the 8th round to get Daniel Jones, I was pretty happy with that.
You're on the clock there, Drew.
Yes, sir. Yep, I'm actually aware this time.
So, guys, I wanted to pivot a little bit and ask y'all a question about running backs in particular, because we know that now more than ever it's becoming more and more of a scarce position, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year in the Scott Fish Bowl, we have 22 roster slots, and we're only required to start one running back. So the question I want to ask y'all is, how many running backs are y'all actually planning to roster in a format like this? Because in my mind, if we only have to start one and there seems to be less of a premium, I'm thinking you're probably more than sufficient with 4 or 5 tops, right?
I don't know if you noticed my draft, but I've been pounding running backs over and over again, because there's going to be a point in this draft where there's not going to be any running backs I like anymore, but there's going to be a ton of wide receivers still left on the board that I like. There's still going to be some late tight ends and even some late quarterbacks that I'm fine taking a shot on. But yes, it's you only have the one running back spot, but in all of those flex spots, I am going to be trying as hard as possible to have either a running back or a tight end. So when you're talking about how many running backs, for me, it's 5+. And a lot of people I can see them in the chat, 3 to 5 is going to be a very popular answer. I'm going to want to literally have 5+. And I'm going to want guys that are getting tons of carries, like a Zamir White or an Isaiah Pacheco. I even took a shot on Tony Pollard because it's like, but it's going to be Pollard or Spears, and they paid him for a reason. And even if he gets half of it, like he's going to be more valuable in this format.
So for me,
I played the game too that the quarterback I wanted was going to come back to me, my 3rd quarterback, and Bryce Young did in fact make it back to me at the 10-6.
I love that.
It's insane how late he's going. All they did was add another number 1 wide receiver, everyone's favorite rookie running back, and a new rookie tight end, on top of bringing in Deontay Johnson, on top of improving the offensive line, on top of getting a better coach. and he's going to be in his sophomore season. Like, if he improves marginally and has just kind of a nice season. Oh, and by the way, he has some mobility and rushing ability. Like, yes, Bryce Young in the 10th round in this format, that's a smash pick.
Big Bryce, baby.
So, what if your quarterbacks are your running backs? That's a problem.
Well, I'll say this is that there have actually been leagues in the past where I've drafted Josh Allen, and I'm like, I'm thin at running back. So in effect, Josh Allen was my third running back as well. So, if you have a quarterback that has a high rushing upside, I mean, sure, why not take advantage of the rushing value? But no, I wouldn't advise banking on that because they just get less carries.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, with the running back position, like I'm, if I can take them early, I want to do it early and often. The later it gets into the draft, I would rather take my shot on guys that are, whether it's receiver or tight end. But if you have guys that have guaranteed carries with the points per, with the bonuses they get for carries and first downs and things like that, guys like I got JT in the 2nd round, Mixon in the 5th, Walker in the 6th. I feel good about those guys. Actually, I wanted to get Brian Robinson in the 10th, but Jorge sniped me there at the 9-10 turn. Actually, Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, those guys were both in my queue. But Brian Robinson, I feel like he's going to be a really good value in that 9th, 10th round based on the volume he's likely going to get in that offense. Like, if I can get guys like that, I want to get them early and often. But then the later it gets in the draft, I'm probably not going to be taking too many shots at running back. So I do want probably, I would say about 4 to 5 running backs on my team, but I want to get like 3 of those pretty early on.
Yeah, you want to make sure you get some healthy running backs too. You also want to make sure you pay attention to waivers.
That's why you don't draft until week 15.
Yeah, exactly. and if you're like Jack, you're gonna have a lot of running backs. What you should be targeting because of the increased usage totals for the position. All right, gentlemen, 11 rounds in. What are you thinking about your squad so far? We'll start with you, Rhett.
I'm sitting here. I realized that I took Brees to the top of the draft because of the running back situation. And then I was like, waited 7 rounds. And then I'm sitting here and I'm like, Devin Singletary, has a potential to be a good bell cow there. Gus Edwards, bell cow potential. So I'm sitting here and I think my strategy has been to find guys that are just going to have bell cow potential and high upside at those positions because of that 0.25 carry. I think all these guys that I drafted definitely, or at least 200 carries in their teams for the season, and we'll see where that goes. But I feel good about that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pound one more right now because I don't think Nick Chubb's going to be ready until about mid-season. So
you're going Jerome Ford. Jack, what do you think of your team, man?
I love my team. The only time really that I felt like I got sniped was early by you, in fact, with the tight ends, Kelsey and Pitts. I would have taken one probably of them. I don't know if I would have taken both. But I mean, I'll take the draft board as it comes to me. And when I end up with Christian McCaffrey, A.J. Brown as my starting 2 picks, I'm never going to be mad about that. I got my 2 quarterbacks after that. I think Tua is being underrated. Like, again, when I look at they already had Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and the running backs. And, now they're going to add Malik Washington and Taj Washington. And I'm blanking on the running back's name, the new one they just added there.
Jalen Wright.
There you go, Jalen Wright. But then they also had Jonnu Smith, who's kind of a sneaky addition. It's like, again, sum of all parts. When I look at Tua and the ability to have a sneaky 40 touchdown season, I mean, if the Dolphins are competing for the playoffs, and I'm going to get my favorite rookie wide receiver right here. So just complete things for me. Lad McConkey.
Big lad.
Get a nice little stack with Herbert. But Herbert, I was mentioning too, I love him because I think he's going to have a lot more rushing upside this year in that offense than people think. And Njoku was, for me, the teardrop at tight end. So I took him so that I had at least one tight end I was like confident in. And James Cook, I think people are like crazy underrating James Cook. Talk about Dalton Kincaid being the primary in that offense. The primary in that offense is going to be James Cook. Like, people are acting like Ray Davis, a 4th round rookie, and Frank Gore. Like, these guys aren't coming in to take James Cook's job. They are going to be, they might get some goal line work and some backup work, but James Cook had 1,500 yards last season, and he had 6 touchdowns. So if you give him a little bit of positive touchdown regression, the same 1,500 yards. And by the way, Joe Brady had him going for 20 to 25 carries a game until they just kind of shut it down at the end of the season because they didn't need to have him out there. Like, he is going to be so good this year, and people are just underrating him like crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to scoop up as much of James Cook as I can in any startup that I'm in, because I'm along the same wavelength as you. If you look at his usage, that back half of the season, the Buffalo Bills absolutely rode James Cook, and it left a lot of Stephon Diggs managers pretty salty at the end of the year. Drew, what are you thinking about your squad at the 1-3, man?
So I went a little bit different in the second round. Mark Andrews was sitting there for me in the second round. I could have went with the Lamar, Mark Andrews stack given the tight end scoring, but I wanted to try something a little bit different because running backs are also very valuable, especially the top end guys based on the scoring. So I wanted to go running back instead and see how the tight end room played out. Looking back, I do regret that a little bit. I would have felt a little bit better having Mark Andrews there in the second. And then maybe I go a different direction instead of Kenneth Walker or Joe Mixon there in the 5th and 6th round. But I was hoping, I gambled and was hoping that one of, McBride, Andrews, Pitts, Kincaid would have made it back to me in the 3rd round, and none of that ended up happening. And so I like to try to start off the draft with the quarterback or running back and the tight end in the first 3 rounds ideally. But if the tight end or the running back isn't there, I'm not going to take them. So I would have liked to have been able to switch those a little bit, but I'm extremely high on Drake London this year, obviously with the addition of Kirk Cousins, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's 2 of my top 10 wide receivers this year. So being able to get those at the 3-4 turn, I felt good about. I think the format will be really good for Mixon. I think he's going to, command a lot of the opportunity there. I like Pat Freiermuth quite a bit this year, and so waiting on tight end, but still being able to get him as my tight end 1 in the 7th round, given the scoring and given the lack of competition beyond George Pickens for him. I felt good about that. And then Daniel Jones, he's a guy I like a lot in this format, but then being able to turn around in the 11th round and get Russell Wilson as well. He was a guy in points per game. The scoring for Scott Fishbowl 14, based on what he did last year, he was the quarterback 6 in points per game. And so being able to get him in the 11th round, I think he's in a better room in terms of the coaching he's around and the weapons he has at his disposal. So I think being able to wait on my quarterback 2, but still get Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson, I like that quite a bit. And then sandwiched in between those 2 quarterbacks, getting 2 guys I'm really high on this year with Chris Godwin and Deontay Johnson. I think with Godwin moving back into the slot, I think he's going to, have a better fantasy season this year than he has the last couple of years. And I think Deontay Johnson, he gives the Panthers the separator that they haven't had in that wide receiver room in quite some time. So I feel good about those guys in the 9th and 10th round.
Yeah, solid squad. If you look at Russell Wilson's, I think last 7-game stretch that he played for the Broncos, with his carry attempts, 8, 9, 2, 11, 10, 6, and 7. So Russell Wilson, underrated rusher. And in this format where you want to try to secure the rushing quarterbacks that late, I mean, I don't hate it. It's just how long is he going to keep the job?
That's the question. That's why he's my quarterback 3 and not my quarterback 2.
It's worth the risk at that point. And would you look to, handcuffing him to Justin Fields, or are you just letting Justin Fields slide if you're the Russell Wilson owner?
It's definitely in consideration for me. If I take Russ, I would put more of a I guess I would be more worried about it if Russ was my quarterback 2. But with him being my quarterback 3, I probably want to roster about 4 quarterbacks. So if I take Russ and I want my 4th quarterback to be Fields, and he's in a position in the draft where I don't have to reach like crazy, I don't mind doing it. But it's not something I'm going to go out of my way and try to reach to make happen, though.
Yeah, and if Madden has told us anything, Scott Fishbowl 14 is set up for Justin Fields to finish as the QB1 if he's returning kicks. that would be left to be seen. I'm on the clock. We got 3 rounds left. The draft in itself, I believe, is 20 something rounds. Jack, when do you start targeting a kicker?
I'm not. I fade kicker, but that's because math says there's 32 kickers in the league, and I don't see the point in reaching on. And I get the name value of a Justin Tucker, McFearless, butt kicker, but I'm like, nobody likes Dan Carlson for the Raiders, even though he was like the number 1 scoring kicker in fantasy for a couple years. I'll take Kaimi Fairbairn. There's kickers I like that go late, so I'll take a different guy.
Yeah, and if you look at, I think it was like the kickers last year, the rookie kicker out of San Fran, was it Moody? Was just
or wasn't it the kid Aubrey for the Cowboys too?
Dallas, yeah, him too. Yeah, just
what I'm saying. It's a kid.
Waiver claims. Yeah, you don't need to jump up. I mean, the only guy probably worth reaching because of how powerful his legs is, but every kicker seems like can crank a 50-yard
Justin Tucker is the only one I would say if you're going to reach on a kicker, take Justin Tucker, because it's not just the leg, it's the guarantee of the accuracy, where it's like even a McFearless or a butt kicker, I could see them just it could happen where they have a bad season. Tucker he's too far into his career now, where he's our modern day Adam Vinatieri. He just doesn't miss. He's got ice in his veins.
Clutch, just money from the kicking line. Drew, what about you? When do you start targeting the kickers, man?
Close to the last round, especially since I'm drafting on sleeper this year and I can only start one anyway. It's probably going to be my last pick, right? I might not even draft one at all, and I'll just stash an extra running back or receiver at the end of my bench, and I'll pick up a kicker before week 1. If I was playing on MFL, it would be a little bit different because you can flex kickers. There is some and there is definitely some flexibility for them. I was on MFL last year. It was definitely helpful to be able to start kickers some weeks, so it might be a little bit different on there. But with me being on sleeper this year, it'll be the last pick if I make one at all.
All right. If you had to suggest, we'll start with you, Rhett, one rule change heading into Scott Fishbowl 15, what would it be?
Oh my God, this is such a good question. And honestly haven't put any thought into it. But let's just go ahead and let's give running back some power back, man. Let's nerf up that running back a little bit more. Let's go half a point a carry next year, and let's see what that takes us.
Ooh, I like that. You got one for us, Jack?
I mean, I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist, and I'm not going to lie. The roster construct this year is throwing me a little bit. I would definitely change it back a little. I would keep flex. I like having the mass flex, but I would have I think I would have been a little more traditional. I probably would have gone 1 QB, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 4 flex, and then the super flex, so that you had 5 total flex spots, technically speaking.
Yeah. So you're just the guy yelling.
That's what I would do next year. Is I would flip it back to a little bit more of a traditional roster construct.
All right. All right. So Jack doesn't like fun. Drew?
I'm really about to rain on the parade then. I get rid of the super flex altogether.
Get rid of super flex altogether.
Go back. Let's go back to our roots. 1 quarterback league.
Let's go standard scoring, 1 QB.
No, half PPR, 1 quarterback league. Let's get back to our roots. Let's get back to it and shoot from the hip from there. Yeah, that's that. I'm an old head. Whenever I still prefer 1 quarterback to super flex. I know that's not the way to go anymore, but I still enjoy it.
All right. For me, maybe if they keep the returner points, they add IDP, but IDP no tackles. So because there are some defensive players that do return the ball, being able to draft those guys and just strictly utilize them as returners might be a little bit of an advantage. But then you might be at a disadvantage because you have to find 32 of them at least, right?
Yeah, see, so Mr. Scampers is a man of culture.
Super flexes for cowards.
Famous Jay has a suggestion as well. They have bonus points for 300-yard quarterback, 100 yards for running backs, wide receiver, and tight end. And there are some bonuses worked in. I can't remember exactly what they are, but I know that there are some bonuses worked into Scott Fishbowl too.
You kind of need that variance in such a big tournament, though, right?
Yeah, you do.
To try
you want it to be unique.
That
part of the fun with it is that the fact that it is so unique, and it's something different to offer. I like that the scoring changes and that he tries to add something unique, and so tries to highlight something that he thinks should be more, I guess, more prevalent in the fantasy industry, like third round reversal. I was introduced to third round reversal because of Scott Fishbowl personally. And so, like that my first Scott Fishbowl, I think, was the first year that they put third round reversal in. So that was kind of cool for me. And now I think that should be a part of any dynasty startup that you do. And beforehand, I never even knew that was an option. So I like that he gives you the opportunity to learn about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Like it. We got just a few more minutes left on this show before we jump off and before this draft finishes. Shimi, drafter, drafting out of the 5 spot, wants us to recap some of the teams, give us positive and negative feedback. We don't have to go through all the squads. If you guys just want to pick a squad maybe you like or a squad you dislike, go ahead. And we'll start with you, Jack.
Well, let's do shimmies because he asked the question. Shimmy yo, shimmy em, shimmy yay.
Hey,
give me the mic so I can take it away. I love that he took Mahomes and sniped him from me. I like the running back stacking because how I live high T. The only thing is the tight end guy. You got to get a tight end, and I kind of sniped him a little bit from you with Njoku. You're not going to survive in a tournament like this with Chig, no Conquo, and Michael second fiddle Mayer.
Yeah.
So you got to get tight ends earlier. That's the one thing. I really like the rest of. Oh, and Will Levis says your second quarterback is kind of gross. I would take, if you're gonna wait that long, like I would look for, maybe it's because it's my pick, but I just am so in love with Bryce Young in the 10th round. I think it's ridiculous that he's being drafted that late when all they did was just add the entire world to his team. So
yeah, I mean, the only knock for Bryce was that he would have to have such a upgrade in production for his season, especially in this format, to be worth taking ahead of some other guys. That's the only thing for me.
I mean, Bryce, it doesn't have to be that massive, frankly.
Well, if you look at where guys like Tua finished last year in points per game, he was a high teens finisher. And he threw for almost 5,000 yards, right? So for Bryce to get that production for fantasy reasons in this format, I think it's decent value there where you got him.
All right, Chris, highlight your team.
Drew, go ahead. My team.
Highlight your team. You're my boy. I know I can do this to you, and you won't take it to heart. We're gonna tear it apart. No, I'm actually here to give you a lot of props because through the first 3 rounds, it was a 10 out of 10 draft. No notes, no changes. Richardson, Kelsey, Pitts, that is a beautiful start. But then in the 4th round, I like where your head was at going with the running back position. But you had the chance to take Isaiah Pacheco, a guy who's going to get the guaranteed carries. He's in a better offense. He's got if you want to bet on a guy getting rushing touchdowns, it's tough to project. But is there really a better bet than a guy that's spearheading the Chiefs backfield and going to get those carries? So I would have taken Pacheco over White at that point, but I like where your head was at from a positional standpoint. I love getting Caleb Williams back around in the 5th round. No notes, no changes. I think that's a great bet. I love Caleb Williams this year. But then Zay Flowers, I personally would have went with Michael Pittman or DK Metcalf. Again, I was torn. Yeah. I like where your head's at positionally. But if you look at Zay Flowers splits with whenever Mark Andrews was healthy versus whenever Mark Andrews was out, it's wild how different Zay Flowers' numbers look. So unless you're going to make the gamble or the bet that Mark Andrews is just going to miss a large chunk of the year again, I think that Zay Flowers should be a step behind some of those other guys that he's going around. I think he's a guy personally that I'm fading at this point. It was his rookie year, so he's going to grow. I don't expect it to be exactly what it was last year, but I still think if Mark Andrews is on the field, I don't think he's going to be able to return at his ADP right now. So I would have went a different direction at that point. But then the rest of the way down, I love the Stevenson pick, especially after what they just showed, their confidence in him with the contract extension they gave him. I think he's a great value there. He's going to get a ton of work. They're going to lean on him both in the running game and, I'm sure he's going to be Drake May's best friend as he tries to get acclimated to the offense as well. So, I love that pick in the 7th round. Shaheed, given the bonuses, he was one of the guys that I talked about. If I want to take a bet on somebody, sorry, let me just, before the draft wraps up, you've got to be kidding me, Rhett. I'm just realizing what happened. I hate you. I really don't like you. So I like the Shaheed pick. Calvin Ridley, I think he's a solid value as well. JSN, I think he's a great value. So the rest of the way, I think you crushed it. This was an incredible draft. 1 to 2 picks I would have changed around, but whenever you're talking about 15 rounds, it's nitpicking at that point. But I like how you approached it, though.
Drew, what are you so upset about, though, man? I'm so curious.
Jelani Woods was just going to be my 15th round auto select. I just want to get him on the screen, and I went to type his name in, and it wasn't showing up. And I was like, "What do you mean Jelani Woods isn't available? Why in the hell would Jelani Woods not be available?" And then I looked just a few spots back, and sure enough, there's Rhett drafting Jelani Woods. You could, oh, you son of a bitch!
Jeez. That's the draft. We appreciate everyone hopping in. We appreciate all our drafters that took part. Rhett, what was your favorite pick of your draft, man?
My favorite pick of my draft, if I can just go through here real quick, Kyler Murray in the 2nd round is really hard to top because, that's just excellent value. I really like with quarterbacks running out and needing rushing upside, Deshaun Watson in the 6th round I thought was another excellent value as well. For myself. And that's really where I was, is like, if I'm going to approach it in the Scott Fish Bowl this year, I'm going to look for guys that have that high rushing upside and any line yop I can get from passing yards, which the line yop certainly is there for Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson. Then I'll certainly take that. Also just realized that I went full Cajun and said the word line yop, which means something extra. So my bad, y'all.
All right, Jack. Make sure everyone tuning in, you stick around. Shoot the Gap is on right after us. Jorge, Gary Davenport's there. Jack, let the people know what you got going on inside of fantasy football, outside of fantasy football. Floor is yours, man.
So it's all in one place. And the easiest way to look it up is honestly just look up at Jack Lucenay on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. But basically, it's Worst Sports Channel. We got 3 shows going. There's the interview show, the wrestling show, and the fantasy football show.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate your time and your insight heading into the Scott Fish Bowl 14 draft season. I'm looking forward to drafting beside you, Jack.
Thanks so much for the invite, you guys.
Absolutely. For Drew at Drew3MR, for Rhett at R Manuel Sports, for Jack at Jack Lucenay, I'm Chris.